Hey y'all, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we talk a little bit about all things spooky. But specifically for this last little bit of October, for 13 days we are doing nothing but talking about Appalachian folklore and reading true stories that came from there, and also watching a few clips that I find. Welcome officially to day 3, and for day 3 we are going to be diving all into the deer here that are not exactly deer. Remember that when you are in the Appalachian Mountains, it is totally fine to look at the wildlife, to admire them, to take pictures, do whatever. But if something starts to feel off or look off, avert your eyes. Don't stare into the trees for too long, or things within them or the trees themselves will look back at you. That's right, they can look like trees too. But I won't get ahead of myself, we will focus on the deer. So the reason I think that they choose to look like deer is because we see deer as a very innocent animal. I don't know if that's because we all watched Bambi a bit too young, but I have never once been scared of a deer. Not even a mom with babies around. So if I am wanting to harm something, I am going to choose to look very innocent, right? Like, that's just the situation. So it makes sense that these predators are choosing to look like deer because it's going to work. We're not scared of deer. But they can't get it exact. And that's what you need to look out for. You will notice that color is slightly off. Maybe their legs are a bit longer. Specifically, one set of legs will be longer than the other, and it'll just look off. They can be really thin. Like, I'm talking not even the wasting disease. Is that what it's called? The chronic wasting disease that deer get? I think that's what it's called. I'm talking worse than that. Like, skin thinly stretched over the bone. Pale color. Its head will look slightly off. You will know something's wrong. And also, on top of the things looking so strange, they also may be standing up on 2 legs, and that's also a dead giveaway. Now, seeing a deer that's not a deer is less common than the other 2 things that we've talked about, but it is common enough that I've experienced it myself. So I grew up on a farm essentially in the middle of nowhere. It's 100 acres surrounded by woods. It's massive. I moved out of there when I was around 20 years old to a townhouse in city limits. Technically, I'm in like a suburb area, but there is a pretty decent sized wooded area behind my house. And how it goes is my backyard is here. There's a road, there's a field, and then there's woods. And in that field is where I saw the iridescent deer. Now, for some reason, I was lying in bed up here upstairs, and I just felt this urge to look outside. Sometimes you'll get that here. It's best to ignore them. I did not. I opened my curtain, looked outside, and saw an iridescent deer standing in the woods. And whenever the lights from the cars would hit it when they passed, it would be iridescent. Like, it was very iridescent. So I called my husband over. He saw it too, and he said it might be a decoy. Like, maybe people are hunting right there. I have no idea. So I was like, oh, okay. So I'm about to turn and look away, and this deer walks away into the woods, and I watched it just walk away. Now, other than that, it looked like a normal deer. It wasn't super skinny. It didn't have weird-shaped legs. Like, it looked normal other than the iridescent vibe of it, like the color of it. It was so strange. That is not the only thing I have seen in that field. I've also caught really strange noises from there. Something's up with those woods, and I would love to go investigate them someday. But anyways, enough about my stories. Let's get into stories that you guys have sent in to me about the not deer. This happened to me around 3 years ago. I visited Appalachia once and never went back due to seeing a creature that looked exactly like a deer, but there was something off. I know, it sounds like one of those pygmies who just wants to be mysterious, but I'm not lying. I was alone in the forest at around 8 or 9 at night, and I started hearing things, and this thing looked at me. It was a deer. Its ribcage was exposed, and blood was everywhere. It was standing on its hind legs. It looked up at me dead in my eyes for what seemed like forever. It wouldn't stop looking at me with its 4 eyes. I've always remembered that to this day, and it always gives me shivers. Everyone thinks I'm crazy or thinks I'm lying. 4 eyes? I've never seen anything like that, and I thought my iridescent deer story was bad. You know, it's fine. I'm gonna have nightmares about that, though. But, I mean, I guess it is possible that it can look like that. Because like I said, something about it's just always off. Like, don't look at it for too long. Don't stare at it for too long. But in the few seconds you're looking at it, look hard enough to inspect to make sure nothing's off. You know what I mean? Alright, next story. I've never been a big believer in the paranormal, but I love watching your videos. I recently experienced something that's never happened before, and I was wondering what your thoughts would be. A little background, I grew up and still live in the Appalachian region of Ohio, and I have a small stretch of woodland behind my house. A few Sundays ago, while I was in my room, my mom came upstairs and told me that she would be going to church soon and asked if I wanted to come. I'm not religious or spiritual, so I decided to stay home. About 20 minutes after she left, I decided to go downstairs and get some food since I was hungry. As I'm searching for food in the fridge, I start to hear a baby crying right below our kitchen window. Our window had been open all day long. My mom likes to open our windows to get fresh air whenever it rains. This crying sounded very odd, like it was playing on a loop. The crying never ceased, not once. I brushed it aside because my neighborhood had plenty of kids, and I just assumed one of them had fallen off their bike and skinned their knee or something. But it was a darker day that Sunday. Looking back, I can't even remember why I thought it was a child because it sounded like an infant type of crying. There were no kids on our street because it was raining pretty hard. And the fact that it was coming from my backyard. But as I said, I brushed it aside and sat down on my living room couch and ate the meal I prepared. Sometime later, I finished my meal, and while I was scrolling through social media, I realized the insistent crying was still there, this time sounding further away but still in the general vicinity of our backyard. I decided to get up, wash my dishes, and put them in the dishwasher, and as soon as I was doing this, I looked outside my window above our sink. As I'm looking outside, there's a fly in here that's about to drive me bananas. As I was doing this, I look outside the window above our sink, and as I'm looking outside, I see something lurking in our backyard. A deer. It was sitting near where our backyard ends and the woods begin, and I was staring into the trees. This isn't necessarily weird, because where we live, deer often find a way into our backyard. Once a deer hopped our fence and ran into my mother while she was gardening. I never realized why whenever she told that story she seemed mildly terrified, but now as I was staring at it, it's hard to describe how this deer looked, but I'll do my best. It was sitting at an angle at which I could see its skin stretched taut across its bones. It was lengthy and had a singular antler. It had a dark red liquid dribbling out of its mouth and down from its neck, presumably on its chest. Just when I realized how long I'd been staring, the crying I heard had stopped, and everything was silent besides the pouring rain. It looked up on two legs and was starting to turn its head towards me to face me. My heart was pounding, and my gut told me something was wrong. I never got the chance to look in its eyes, or to even see it turn its head completely. I was honestly too scared and looked away before it even got halfway through turning. I closed and locked the windows as calmly and as quietly as I could. I ran upstairs to my room and locked my door. I didn't come out until my mom came home, but even then I told no one what happened. Since this happened, paranormal things like knocking on doors and windows when no one's there, hearing my name being called in familiar voices, and vivid sleep paralysis have been picking up, which I definitely could give another story on. My main concern is why is this happening and how do I get it to stop? I'd love to hear your opinions. Oh, I have them. So whenever you give this thing attention, you essentially feed it and get it obsessed with you, so it will start terrorizing you in the ways that you described. What you can do is cleanse your space. Obviously, I always recommend that. Line your windows and door frames with black salt and put iron stakes outside of your property on all four corners. As safely as you can. Try not to go in those woods for the time being, because even if you can keep it away from you like that, it's still got its eyes on you, and the second you're off of that property, out of that protection, it's not going to be fun. So try to avoid those woods. But yeah, these things, they become obsessed. Like, it's a whole game to them. They like the chase more than they like the finish line. It's gross. Alright, next story. I'm Lauren, and I live in the Appalachian part of Kentucky. My family and I live on a decent-sized plot of land, around 50 acres. We no longer farm because our cattle would often go missing, and my parents no longer had the time. We never found the missing cattle, but there was always a bone pit under a small area of trees in one of the cattle fields. The bones would just appear, already old and dried, but no one in my family knows how they got there. I can send a photo if you want. I didn't want to send you a photo without your permission, because sending a random photo of bones would be kind of weird. I would love to see that, actually. Everyone in my family... Why is this fly obsessed with me? Everyone in my family has experienced something strange except me. My older sister, 17 at the time, now 20, and moved out, once said that she saw what she believed was a knot deer while hunting alone in a tree stand. She said it stared at her for what felt like 15 minutes and walked away, but it didn't move like a normal deer. My mom has heard whistling while walking in the forest and has seen shadow figures amongst the trees. My father was camping on our land with my older cousin that we no longer speak to and swore they heard a whistle followed by an unreal growl, and then something attacked their tent. This is the most believable to me because my cousin, who was 17 at the time, came back crying so hard he threw up. My little brother, 11 years old, has been experiencing these things since he was 7. He also heard whistling and tapping on various windows around the house. My little sister, 14 years old, has also been experiencing these things since she was 7. She's heard tapping on the windows above the garage. We live on a hill, so the garage is also a basement. as well as the windows on the porch. I've never personally had any experiences, yet I believe my family. Well, this worries me because I'm afraid something bad could happen to me. I'm autistic and I use a swing outside on my porch to calm down when I'm overstimulated. The swing is right outside my little sister's window. I tend to go out on my own at around 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., sometimes even later. I've never experienced anything, even when I'm outside alone at night. Could it be that whatever is lurking in the woods and mountains is okay with me, or could this be something worse? Honestly, I wouldn't think too much into it. Just be like, okay, it's leaving me alone. Take that with what it is. Maybe it knows you have a mutual respect for it. You're not out taunting anything or whatever. You're just kind of minding your business. I would be curious to know, do you like clean up outside? Do you respect nature a lot? That could have a lot to do with like a mutual respect thing, and it leaves you alone. But I would just be happy it's happening. Don't think too much into it. Still be alert outside. That doesn't mean you're like a ticking time clock for an experience. You might never have one, but stay alert. But I think you're fine. Alright, next story. I live in rural countryside of East Cork, Ireland, where there is lots of woods and land that has become vacant throughout the years. I've attached pictures of a reservoir that is around 5 minutes walking from my house. The body of water is surrounded in thick woodland. Throughout the years, many people have taken their lives in the water, and some people who have done this have reportedly never shown signs of suicidal tendencies. Our family's been in the area for many generations, and we were always told growing up that we should never go into the reservoir at night. An explanation as to why this rule was there was never given, but was also never asked. One morning back in 2020, I was driving the narrow country road that reservoir was on, that had woods on it. It was in the summertime, and the sun was shining without a cloud in the sky. As I was coming up to these woods, this black figure stepped over the hedge of the road. It was a black figure that resembled a wolf, but the strange thing is that it was so tall, it's almost deer-like. It had deer feet, a long pointy nose and ears, dog-like, and a long black tail. This thing was so big that it crossed the road in front of me with ease and hopped over a 6-foot hedge into the woods. I would also like to tell you that there are no bears, wolves, mountain lions, or anything like that in Ireland. The thing that shook me to my core was that this thing almost looked 2D. I could not make out any contours to this thing. It was almost like someone had drawn this thing in like a cartoon way. I couldn't see any eyes, mouth, or anything like that. This thing was a shadow, and although the sun was beaming down and casting a shadow on the road of the ditches, this thing did not have one. I haven't seen it till this day, but I still remember the image like it was yesterday. I did my research recently and found out that I used to be connected to the Appalachian Mountains. I'm not sure if the shadow figure is the twisted souls of people who have taken their lives in that water, or if this thing was one who lured them into doing it, but I would love to hear your take on this. I wonder if anyone that lives in Ireland, is there any folklore about creatures like that? Because the way it was described, it literally sounds like some kid drew a picture and made a birthday wish that came true for it to come to life. Like, that's so strange. To me, it could be like a manifestation of sadness and grief if so many people went there to take their lives. But, I don't know. Maybe it did lure them into it. I have no idea. Alright, I think we have time for one more story. My name is Raleigh, and I'm a longtime follower of yours from TikTok. I love the way you tell stories and how you're able to bring other people's experiences to life. While I would love to spend an entire email praising your talent, that's not what I'm currently reaching out for. I live on Kings Mountain in the Appalachian Mountains, specifically on 3 acres of heavily wooded spookiness. I occasionally take one of my 6 cats outside during the day to let him play in the garden. His name is Kyle. He spends so much time outside with me every day, I suspect he may have picked something up outside. Each one of our cats is incredibly distinct looking, each having different fur colors, patterns, and lengths. This is important. About a week and a half ago, my mom was sleeping downstairs at night, and we both saw Kyle go upstairs with my stepdad. However, when I came downstairs at 1 in the morning for a snack, he was sleeping on my mom's lap. Okay, cool. My stepdad probably just kicked him out of the bedroom for being annoying. I didn't think anything of it and got my snack, Ritz crackers. They were delicious. Before I went upstairs, I looked outside and saw a deer staring into the house. I wouldn't have noticed it if it weren't for the motion sensor light. Deer don't get that close to the house. If they do, they sprint off as soon as the light turns on. I was creeped out by how it was staring at the house, but ultimately brushed it off and went back upstairs. The next morning, I came down and told my mom about the deer, and she immediately said that we have a problem, which freaked me out as I'm already scared of deer. She followed it up immediately by asking me if I saw Kyle sleeping with her the previous night, and I said yes. She slammed her hands down and shouted, "Your stepdad didn't kick him out of that room until 3 in the morning. The same day we lit a stick of Palo Santo, Ma and I are both practicing witches. Smoke cleansed Kyle and haven't experienced anything spooky since. I mentioned that it was important that all of our cats look different because there's no way that I could have mistaken that cat on my mom's lap for the one of the others. It was definitely Kyle. We've since dubbed whatever was in our house that night Anti-Kyle and have put iron stakes about our property. I'm so glad that worked, though. Holy crap, that's terrifying. One of the things that these things like to do is pretend to be animals, and it grosses me out. And I don't like talking about it because I feel like if I mention that these things can look like animals, it sets animals up to get hurt if, like, someone thinks that their pet is something else if they're going through something. So I try not to talk about it, but that is completely horrific. Oof. Well, anyways, that is all for this video. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and please come back tomorrow because we are going to be talking about the sudden darkness in the woods. So sometimes in Appalachia, you will be minding your business outside without a cloud in the sky midday, and it gets dark, like midnight dark. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. Okay.